Hi, guys, and welcome to another episode of the Recollection Room.
Hello. Today we have a special guest. All of them are special.
Yeah. Another special guest.
Another special guest. And you wanted to interview him from, I guess, since you decided to do a podcast.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think so. Yeah. One of the first guests was on the list.
He was Philip Folsom.
Very great person. Really so much knowledge and a lot to share. And I think we're gonna invite him again because it wasn't enough time to go over everything he does. But
definitely, and we're gonna invite his wife Tanya too.
Yeah,
very soon.
Great. So
he also got us gifts, guys. Our new cups for the show.
Okay, enjoy.
My name is Philip Folsom, and I'm an anthropologist, I'm an author, and I'm an Army veteran. And the connection that we all have is that not only we both we're all Wolf fans, but I've tied a lot of my work and my studies around leadership and anthropology and with wolves. So it's one of the big themes that I use in my work. You guys read The Alchemist?
Yes.
Yeah, probably. Everybody out there has read The Alchemist. So there's a theme in there in some of the editions, not the later edition, but the early editions of The Alchemist. They talk about personal legend, which is basically your destiny. It's that unique, sacred purpose that we have in the world. And I think when we're young, we know that. We have an idea about what's available to us because we're still operating at our full potential. So we could be astronauts or we could be, anything we want to be at that point. And then society tends to chip away at that sense of efficacy, self-esteem, the potential, and the stories get smaller. So we end up settling and compromising for what we think we're allowed. So for whatever reason, even though I've had a lot of setbacks and a lot of challenges, and I grew up with a lot of what's referred to as pre-trauma, which we'll talk about, I still managed to carry a sense of destiny, of at least what I aspire to do. And some of that is directly linked to, we'll talk about pre-trauma right now, that there's a thing called ACE, A-C-E, which is Adverse Childhood Experiences. And everybody's had some. We've all suffered some neglect or some sense of lack or abandonment or inadequacy. Some people have a lot of it. And those people who have a lot of it tend to not deal with stress and trauma as well. We see a lot more, instead of resiliency, more post-traumatic stress, addiction, coping mechanisms, and whatnot. So a lot of my work with veterans and with men and women who are in high stress environments, and that might be entrepreneurs, it might be inner city school teachers. Most of those people had remarkably high adverse childhood experiences because we tend to search for situations that are familiar to us, even though they may be very maladaptive. We will tend to have this cognitive bias of that person, even though I know they're not healthy for me, represents something from childhood that is known and familiar, and I'm going to recreate that instead of choosing those people who might be healthy for us, or the careers or the life experiences. So for whatever the reason was, I was able to choose things that were at least somewhat in alignment with my personal legend. And so I grew up in a little small town in Washington State and grew up with a lot of poverty and a lot of kind of neglect and didn't do well in school. I was kind of a misfit. And I ended up joining the Army at 17. And that was it was a search for some sort of infrastructure. Some of it was probably a subconscious need for mentorship, particularly masculine mentorship, that was lacking in our society today. And I didn't know any anything about that. I didn't know anything about initiation or rite of passage or how do boys become men, and I didn't know any of those things. And so for me, there was an intuitive guide that, okay, I need to do that next. And that intuition is a really important thing for all of us. I think all of us watching is how do we tap into that? It's basically our limbic system. So the wolves are running it. They know who's healthy. They know who's safe. They know who's warm, who's cold. They know everything just in that microsecond of meeting. You understand who's who in the zoo. And I like to think of it almost as when we say Marco to the world, and then the world answers with Polo, and you go Marco, Polo. It's a little louder. It's like, oh, choose that one. Yeah. That's the aspect. That's the journey that we're on. And so I knew my Polo for the military was strong because I needed that. And then I looked at, well, is this a career for me? And there was almost no Polo. It was just distant. So I knew that, okay, let me get out of that. And I had a brief experience of actually being a classical ballet dancer, which is kind of a weird little journey. I know.
That's cool.
And you dude, I'm 50 pounds heavier and I'm 55 years old. And so I don't look like anybody who would wear white tights and a jeweled
That's
tunic.
so cool.
But I did a lot of martial arts growing up, and so I took some dance classes when I got out of the Army with an intentional recalibration. I got a strong Polo from that. Here was a very expressive and creative, and I want to say very feminine. There's a feminine energy in dance. Even though obviously there's many men who dance and it can be a powerful, very physical activity, there is something inherently feminine that balanced out my military experience with that. So I actually spent a number of years doing that, and I was a terrible dancer. But I was, tall enough that I could partner women on point. Like, if you guys are wearing point shoes, you're 6 inches taller than you are now. Yeah. And so most dancers are shorter guys who are very physically skillful, like gymnasts, basically. Yeah. So I was able to do a lot of nutcrackers. I was the prince in a lot of ballets. Well, I didn't have to do much, but just lift the girls around. And so,
I can see that.
So that's what got me to LA.
How long did you do that for?
Probably 3-4 years.
Oh, wow. That's a pretty long time.
Yeah.
You must have been good.
Well, yeah, I've always been good at, faking it. But who's to say what's legitimate and what's not? And I think that's another big topic is there was nobody to tell me that I couldn't. And I never had any adult supervision to give me permission to do anything. It didn't exist in my world. I grew up with no adult supervision. So I got to be the arbiter of what I get to do in my life. And I gave myself permission. If you were to look at my just skills, you wouldn't say I'm a professional dancer. Like I wouldn't be allowed in a company class at, let's say, New York City Ballet or a big company. But it didn't matter because I managed to get myself into that position and say I am. Yes. And so, who's to say I wasn't at that point? But eventually there was the polos got quieter, and there is a sense of the quest for significance. And so eventually I got back to school, and I did my graduate work at UCLA, got into anthropology because I knew that there was some looping, repeated events in my life that were happening over and over again. And they were not serving me, they're not serving the people that I was around. So I had to go back in and find out why am I continually doing this thing that's not optimal for my health and happiness and high performance. And a lot of that was some trauma stuff in the military. Eventually, I realized it was stuff even before the military. And I started realizing that almost everyone has a sense of abandonment issues.
Mm-hmm.
We're afraid of being alone. And we're also dealing with inadequacy issues. Those are the two big ones. Those are the two big fears of humanity. And I thought it was just me. I'm trying to hide. Like, I don't want anybody to know that I have these because I'm the broken one and everybody else is successful.
Yeah.
And then I started doing a lot of leadership work, and I started to realize that everyone has this imposter syndrome. Like, who are you to run a podcast?
Right.
Who are you to be an adult? Nobody told you were.
Right.
And so, here you are, like, am I legitimate? Am I real? Am I, authentic? And so that was my first kind of big awareness in the leadership field. And I basically left grad school at that point because I knew that this is applied philosophy or applied anthropology. And I actually started questing after specifically warrior culture. That was what I was really interested in, because I've always, identified strongly with either martial artists or superheroes or soldiers.
Mm-hmm.
And you have to realize that if you look at what are the movies that men watch, what are the books we read, it's just all that. We are desperate for the reclamation of our warrior ethos. And ours are not doing well. Our warrior, in our culture, we're incredibly high clinical anxiety, depression, addiction rates, suicide rates. So that was my big quest of, studying ancient warrior cultures. I went to Japan, I went to Africa. I studied these cultures to find out, did they and are they committing suicide like we are? Are they crippled with anxiety and depression? Is that part of our birthright? Is it inherent in the human culture, or is it inherent in our society?
Mm-hmm.
And that was kind of my big field of study. It directed a lot of the work that I was doing, and wolves are connected to that. So, but that kind of brings us to where I am now,
That's so much. Oh my
which
God.
is I run a leadership company for organizations, and I do a lot of work at Red Bull and SpaceX, and I'm a culture development expert with organizations. And I also run a big men's group called K4, with Omar and a number of the other guys. And K4 is, again, that's an expression of the work that men need, whether it be initiation or accountability or reintegration from all the stressful stuff that we do in the world. And then the last kind of hat that I wear, besides being a husband and a father, and
all the good stuff.
But I run a resiliency program for warriors. It's called Valor.
And what's the demographic? What's the age range for that?
With Valor, initially it was for first responders and veterans, police. That was the bracket. But it turned out that we realized there's a bunch of other socioeconomic groups. Trauma nurses, they see more horrific, damage to human beings than veterans do. Mm-hmm. So, they have tremendous rates of substance abuse and suicide. Inner city school teachers, inner city anybody. So we've kind of opened up the aperture to be including anybody who has high stress environments, and they need resiliency protocol. And it's one of the gaping holes in our culture that we haven't dealt with at all. Last week I worked with in a prison in San Jose with a bunch of veterans in a prison, and that was a powerful experience. Mm-hmm. So prisoners would be included in that Valor topic.
Wow. When I was younger, I definitely felt like I didn't belong, and I was so shy, and my shyness stemmed from definitely not feeling like I belonged
I was good enough, I guess, is what you would say.
Yeah.
And listening to you say, it's like I've gone through so many things by myself, and I didn't have a lot of adult supervision either. I have my mom and a dad, but I didn't have them supervising my growth. Having to do that by myself. Even as a female, as a girl, I went through the whole warrior, what do you call it? Warrior, I guess, hero's journey.
Exploration, or yeah. The hero wins journey. Yeah.
It's beautiful. It's fun that we can do that by ourselves without any real guidance and get to that point.
Well, we can go through that exploration, but we can't go through the initiation. And that's an important part with, as it, you're right smack dab in the middle of the hero's journey is where we actually go meet our dragon. Like we meet the thing that has been sabotaging our entire life. And obviously we've been running from that dragon. It's like, and I'm trying to do everything to not deal with that crippling sense of inadequacy or abandonment. And it turns out that that's the function of that dragon, is it's there, it's born in childhood when you were a little girl, and it was when you did get marginalized and bullied and whatever the things happened to you in your childhood. And so your dragon is really the thing that keeps you safe. That's what she does, is she's there to, when you start to take risks, she's there to sabotage you and say, you're going to get hurt again. So don't do that. Go back home. Like, play small, be a nice girl, do the right things. And that your dragon is manipulative, and she lies, and she tells you stories, and there's a lot of fear and shame and all sorts of stuff related to that. Eventually, we get to the point where we're either hit rock bottom, or we're absolutely done and ready to kill that story. And we have to go to the dragon. And Jordan Peterson says if you have to fight a dragon, you should go to its lair. Otherwise, it comes to your village. And so our dragon has visited our village because we have not been, collectively, we have not been supported in this pursuit of going to the lair. And Joseph Campbell says that the cave you fear to enter contains the treasure you seek, that's the cave, that's where the dragon is. It's the worst place to go.
I love that. That's such a beautiful quote.
Go, get in there. And the reality is that none of us will go in there and stay in there long enough to make the changes unless you have friends guarding the exits. And so that's the initiation. It means I'm going in there long enough that I can really see who she is, this terrifying creature. And you realize that your dragon looks exactly like you.
Yeah.
And that's the moment of ownership and transformation, in that that dragon doesn't have to die. She has to be incorporated or integrated. At which point, then the dragon changes form from this big terrifying thing to a much quieter, smaller serpent. So that's her in the garden. That's the serpent that lies and says, you've done enough work, be complacent. And you guys may not be old enough to have reached the complacency stage of, you've done enough, take a break, you worked hard enough.
You'd be surprised how many steps I've gone through so far.
Okay.
And it was in high school. I was super depressed and complacency hit.
Okay. A lot of people, most people that I meet spend most of their time looping asleep, which is most of their life is just shuffling like the Buddhists call them hungry ghosts. These are the phantom people that we see out in the world who, in Buddhism, they have tiny little mouths that are so small they can't eat, and they're forever hungry. So they're desperately trying to eat, but they can't. And those are the majority of the world that is asleep. They're phantoms. And then eventually they wake up, that call to adventure, and they go and they try to change it, and they get defeated and sent back. And that's most people's lives. Most people
Mhm.
never get into the cave because you can't go into the cave alone. And
How
most
come?
people, it requires allies.
But what if
An ally. Because it's you. You're the one in the cave. You cannot. Viktor Frankl says that the line between good and evil runs through the heart of every person, and who would willingly kill half your own heart? So you can't do it. Human beings cannot self-initiate. We require allies. In the book Iron John about men, they call them bucket men. We need the tribe, the village, to be able to support us in that transformation, because there's a death involved.
Mhm.
Like there's parts of you that die,
Right.
so that the other part can be reborn. And nobody's going to you cannot kill yourself and then have the efficacy to continue on. So some part of you has to be resurrected with the tribe. There is a resurrection portion. And some of this is, and again, in warrior reintegration rituals, when, for example, soldiers or the hunters or a woman who's lost a child, when there's a big traumatic death, like we die. Like, what's the point? The things I've seen, the things I just lost, what's the point?
Mhm.
Well, the tribe carries that trauma. They help you carry the shame. So you go into the sweat lodge or the vision quest or whatever the ritual is in your tribe, and you are carried and resurrected by the tribe.
So could the tribe be a symbolism of just people you care for, that you would come back for?
Yeah. Basically, it's the people who are within your kinship system.
Mhm.
And that used to be, extended family.
Right.
But in Stephen Paula from Apex, he would call it a wolf pack is just a family.
Mhm.
You've heard Paula say that 100 times.
Yes.
A wolf pack is just a family. Her pack is not a family.
Mhm.
Her pack are a bunch of lone wolves, right? What they would call interlopers, who have been welded together
Mhm.
by Stephen Paula
Yeah.
and you guys. So otherwise it wouldn't have happened. Without the tribe, without the structure of Apex, those wolves are dead. They're just going to slip deeper into insanity and trauma and dysfunction, and they're going to be destroyed. So Apex is really the tribal infrastructure that allows these wolves a place to reconnect and ultimately rehabilitate.
Mhm.
And that's
Huge.
the function. The wolves heal the wolves. Stephen Paula don't heal them. Stephen Paula provide the infrastructure for the wolves to heal each other, and that's why we're struggling as a society, is that there is no apex protection project for us. It doesn't exist. You could have made a case that there was fraternal, organizations, there was the church, there was institutions that held that infrastructure or the fabric of society, and they have been pretty much wiped clean now. So now we're just fully a culture of lone wolves who are desperately hunting for healing. Right? They're not. Most people are not even aware. They're not solution aware enough to realize that I need a tribe, a kinship system. They just need to stop hurting.
Mhm.
That's really where most people are, which is why we see so many addiction issues, whether it be porn or doom scrolling or alcohol or whatever
Did
people
you
are
see
doing.
doom scrolling?
And that's really what a wolf who is acting out is just coping, dealing with coping mechanisms, trying not to be in pain, and so we need that pack to heal us, so we can get out of the cave. Otherwise, we just get turned back, and eventually we go back to sleep.
Mhm.
And then we wake up again when something rattles our cage, and we launch out to go like, okay, now I'm going to lose weight this year. It's New Year's. I'm making resolutions, and it never works, because we need the accountability of other people who are aligned with us. And that's really what the new modern kinship system of society is people who share a common vision for the future, a common set of values to move towards that future, and they have some sort of project that they are partnering with. You know, it's kind of like what you guys are doing, this cool thing. It's like you have a why that you share for this platform. You have a certain agreed upon behaviors that you share. And obviously you have a product or a mission that you're conducting. So you have created a little kinship system between the two of you, and that's why it works. You know, it's a powerful experience.
Beautiful. So when did you discover your tribe?
It's a good question. My tribe. The K4 men's group is probably the closest example of a tribe for me. And it's bigger than a tribe. Most tribes will top out at like 100 people, usually much less. But it's the people you can maintain intimate relationships with, close friends.
Yeah, 100 is a lot.
It's a lot. Yeah, most, particularly men, you know, we can count them on our hands. Women have the ability, whether it be just your, you know, EQ or your communication skills or whatever. Women can maintain many more friendships than men, you know, statistically. And K4 has hundreds of men in it, but because it was intentionally designed to have an alignment of beliefs and behaviors that functions as a kinship system. So men help each other. Every time we have a meeting, we formally build a container, a social container, which includes confidentiality and certain other behaviors that are all agreed upon. And so it functions as a kinship system. And the men in K4 will have shared more with men they've never met in person than they would with a lot of their family, because it is a functioning kinship system. And so K4 is probably, the root of my foundation of being able to be functional.
How did you and Tanya meet?
See, Tanya is we were both in Tanja. We met in a leadership company, and we were both doing ropes courses together. And the ropes course is where people climb tall things and work on fear.
Yeah.
Everyone is born with only two fears, and one of them is the fear of falling. All humans have it. So it's a very useful, practical metaphor to put people into scary situations, because you see their behavior in every scary situation. Like, it's very easy to unpack and expand career or relationship or intimacy issues when you see somebody climbing a tree, because you see their dragon. It's no longer them climbing a tree. It's their dragon. They're fighting against their dragon, saying, you can't and you shouldn't, and here's all your excuses, and oh no, you've got a bad knee all of a sudden. Like, all that.
That's so funny.
All that crap comes out and you just go, oh, okay, good to see your dragon. Do you see it? And people don't see their dragon when it possesses them. When we're acting small, when we're, doing whatever show that we drop into when we're not at our highest self, that's our dragon. It just possessed us, because it is us. It is us. It is vying it's our inner critic that is vying for control. And we have this inner hero who's also capable of control. And that's the inner struggle of humanity, is we have this self-limiting monster who says, play small and you are inadequate and you will be abandoned. And then you have this, inner heroic character that's like, you have a destiny, carry on. And these two vying forces. So Tanya and I were working on ropes courses together, and she was she was dating another person, and I was dating another person, and then at one point we got single about the same time, and we were like, hey, because we liked each other, we respected each other, we were good friends. We obviously working with somebody, you know, that they have work ethic, and you know they're a good person, and so we were good people, and she's Canadian, and she'll be a guest down here at some point because she actually runs a youth development program that the Wolves come in on.
I attended
Have you guys been
last
on this
one.
program?
I was the last one in
okay.
Temescal.
Yeah. So she
Not 2 months ago.
yeah.
Last one was 2 months ago.
Yeah. And Temescal means sweat lodge.
Mm-hmm.
We talked about reintegration rituals.
Yeah.
That Temescal is one of the universal reintegration rituals that is across almost every culture. From Mongolia to Africa and North, Central, South America. In fact, the word Temescal or Temescal is the same word all the way from North to South America. Thousands of miles, thousands of cultures. That one word means the same thing everywhere you go. Sweat lodge. And so Temescal Canyon is really an ancient site. It's a really ancient, powerful site. And very few people know actually what it is and what it represents. And we got married there.
Really?
We got married at that site.
I was there on Sunday walking, and I was looking at that little not house, like little building. Like we have like this is great place for wedding, and I was just imagining wedding there and stuff. Yeah. It's great you said that. Yeah. It's beautiful.
Yeah. So that was our kind of the funny story is we were just dating, and we were getting on really well, and she's Canadian, and she had to go home.
Oh, this is the funny part.
Like, that's a bummer. Because this isn't going really well. I said, so you got to go through forms or something? She goes, no, I got to get sponsored, which is impossible. I need to get married, or that's not happening. I was like, I'm not doing anything this weekend.
Oh my god!
Yeah, so we
That's amazing.
We went to Las Vegas and got married, and then we had the Temescal wedding was just the big one for all the
That's amazing.
That was our connection to that story.
Beautiful. Wow. Yeah. Beautiful.
And she's just killing it these days. She's very successful with her little tribe of the facilitators she has, and great to partner with Apex and have the Wolves come out. And it impacts the kids a lot to not only just the Wolves themselves, but the lessons behind the Wolves are really, really powerful.
Can you tell us a bit about love?
About love?
Yeah, healthy love.
That's a squirrely word. We have to define it.
Let's define it.
Okay, I'm going to let you define it.
Why? Healthy or love?
If you're going to talk about God or love, you have to define it first.
Okay, so love, it's not weak, right?
Not weak.
It's not weak.
No.
Love
it's
is strong.
Probably, one of the big ones, right?
Putting things to the test, not letting the dragon out, or putting the dragon in check with your words. Loving someone, just because you love someone doesn't mean you let them do or step all over you.
Okay.
That's the strength part. You want the best for them. You're able to be separate and together. You love them for who they are. You don't change them, but you do wish the best for them. And if anything, you create a structure so that they can grow into their best self.
You got any ads? Love ads?
Love ads.
She's there pretty much.
All right, so there's a lot of pieces in there. I believe that many people look at it, there's a romantic love which comes across as being very codependent, which means I want to be loved without any sort of expectations. And eventually that ends up being kind of just, it's adolescent. Like it's a Hallmark Channel love of, oh, everything was perfect and it's unconditional. I'm like, is it really unconditional? Is love unconditional? That's why I asked for the definition.
Got it.
Because I believe that everything is conditional. And you know, I think you could look at whatever definition or expression of love you have for a person. We're talking about people love, right? And there are things they could do that would alter that feeling. There are, even if it's family, there are certain things that family members can do and have done that alter that relationship. They shift the parameters of what we're calling love.
From having grown up with my family, we've been through so much together. And my feeling of love doesn't change for them at all, but my boundaries, I shift boundaries with them based off of actions. But it doesn't change the amount of love I have for them.
Well, then that's the part of the definition piece.
Yeah.
You know, so what I think most people think of love, which is the unconditional, obsessive, being in love dynamic, eventually, when that's biochemical, like there's that lust, passion.
Lust, desire, lust.
That's a form of love also. And when that burns off, which it does, then people become independent, and that usually breaks the relationship. So if people can find a way to then reconnect from the independence, then they become interdependent, which is ideally where you see long-term relationships or love, and that's the relationship love definition piece, is moving from codependency to independency to interdependency of love. I do believe, and I think closer to your definition of love, is altruism, and which is kind of a fancy word that says I'm willing to do things for you regardless, like at your family, even though there's boundaries. And I'm always looking for what is the practical or tactical expression of that word. So when you say, my feeling of love doesn't change, my boundaries do, I'm like, so what does it actually mean then? Because if it's the boundaries, or that's an actual impact in the real world, like, and that's where I want
the boundary
to
itself.
explore. Yeah. For example, if a really good friend of yours betrayed you or stole from you, you could say, I still love you, but you're not invited in the house. For me, that's an actual practical shift of something in the real world, which is really what I think a lot of my work is directed towards. Is I don't want to stay in philosophy. I want to get to the applied nature where people are more vital. They have better relationships. They're making more money. They're in better shape. They're like, the world is being impacted from that. So that's why I'm always trying to get to what does it actually mean in the real world, and so the sense of altruism, which means I'm willing or maybe even obligated to do certain things for you because of love. And you've probably heard Stephen Paul talk about how that wolves will take care of each other. The wolves will stay and protect an injured wolf, even though it doesn't serve them to do that. Right? So they're willing to allow the boundary to be held, and they'll bring food back. They will sacrifice themselves. That's altruism. And wolves and people are one of the few animals that will will do that, and that's close to that definition of love. Is the ability to sacrifice ourselves for something greater than ourselves, and it's what I believe is one of the reasons why the wolf and humanity has connected. Is that if you look at wolves, they almost always have broken jaws and they always have broken legs, and they do that because chasing elk to make a living, you get busted up. Same thing with humans. Almost every Homo erectus, Neanderthal, Homo sapien, all of us hominids. If you look at all the fossils, we haven't found one that is not broken. We get broken. And the nature of our survival is that we protect each other. We express, and that's love. The famous anthropologist Margaret Mead once was asked at a lecture, what is the oldest example of human culture? And everybody expected pottery, controlled use of fire, whatever, stone tools. And she said, healed bones. If you see a fossil and if a bone has been healed, that's culture. Because other animals don't do that. Other animals, like my last trip to Africa, we were on a safari truck, and there was a zebra that didn't run from us. So we drove over to it, and it had a compound fracture front leg and bone sticking out, and it just stood there. It was just resigned to its fate, and it didn't hobble off. It was just well, here I am. And I said, do we call the veterinarian? And they looked at me like I was crazy. They're like, no, he gets eaten tonight. Oh. And I was like, oh, of course he gets eaten tonight. And that's the nature of zebras. Is they're out. They're like, okay, good luck, Jim. Nice to know you. With wolves, they would be huddled around that zebra. And same with humans. But that only functions within an operating kinship system. And that's the deep wound. We have a kinship-shaped hole in our heart because we don't have people who are going to stay and protect us and heal us, and because we're all trying to get our own individual needs met. And so one of the reasons why Apex is so important is that it is this existing kinship system for people, but obviously for wolves, so that they can experience the healing dynamic of altruism. And that's as close as I can get to, I think, the love that you and I are talking about, which is, I guess, fairly unconditional in that sense.
Love your replies. Tell us a little bit about what you brought.
Oh. Can you guys see that one on that camera? Or
you can see everywhere.
Yay. All right, so these are just my visual aids I like to bring because humans and wolves, we have a partnership that is 35,000 years old. And it happened at the same moment in history that we experienced what's called our cognitive revolution, which is where we became culturally modern. Anatomically, we've been the same for 300,000 years. If we buried you in Africa, you would look exactly the same thing as the African skeletons of Homo sapiens. But culturally, we were not innovative, we were not developing, we had flatlined to the point that we used the same toolkit as Homo erectus, like a million years before the simple Acheulean hand axe. It's a very simple flint tool, and we were not successful. We were a low-level scavenger. We almost were extinct. Like, we weren't doing great on the planet. And there's a common misquote of Darwin that says evolution is survival of the, and that's the misquote. It's evolution is survival of the most adaptable.
Mhm.
That's the reality. And the why I use these two skulls is that the human version of adaptability comes from our prefrontal cortex. This is our executive function. It's the source of a lot of our neuroplasticity, our you can call it free will, consciousness, self-awareness. All that happens here.
Mhm.
And so it allows us to learn. It allows us to be a tool-using primate who can actively learn. And even though incredibly powerful operating system, it didn't get us over the hump of being successful. And numerous times during the last ice ages, we were below extinction threshold.
Mhm.
And that animal, no prefrontal cortex, very little,
Mhm.
there's not a whole lot of that, what you would refer to as neuroplasticity in that, even though 30% bigger brains than our dogs,
Mhm.
really, very smart animals. It doesn't have anything compared to the computing powers of our brains. But they're more adaptable. Wolves had the widest range. Wolves hunt in deserts. The wolves hunt they hunt fish next to the oceans. They're in the mountains. They're at the widest range, the widest food source, incredibly adaptable, with almost no neuroplasticity. So, how did they do that? And then how did we partner with them?
Mhm.
Which is an irrefutable fact. At 35,000 years, we start to see snub-nosed wolves in Siberia being buried with children. We start to see the wolf become the dog.
Yeah.
And at the same time, the exact same line, you see full cultural modernity. We see, ivory flutes, game pieces, symbolic art, ritual burials, the full thing that we go like, yep, that's us. There you go, that's us. So that created us. We did not domesticate the wolf.
Domesticated us, huh?
Yes. That is global royalty. That is apex predator. This, low-level scavenger, almost extinct. So we were very grateful to partner with that. It was not the inverse. And what the joining was obviously globally transformative. Because the moment we did partner with them, we leapfrogged all of the other species to the point where every continent we move to, we see a almost immediate drop off of all the megafauna. We basically hunted our way across the planet with that alliance.
Mm-hmm.
So what they got from us and what we got from them created a globally transformative event, and it has never stopped. We have absorbed them as our dogs. Right? Our dogs are our new wolf partners, and we have vilified what we have left.
Right.
And that in itself is probably a whole other conversation. The big lesson that I teach a lot with the adaptability of the wolf is that they outsourced the adaptability by the different roles that exist within the wolf pack. And that may be what I do believe that is the source of the different roles that function within our tribes, within all of our sports teams, within our military units. And so psychologically, I think all of our quadrant-based worldview that we hold is a wolf operating system. They had it before us.
Mm-hmm.
And so you can call it the diversity or the adaptability that we got from them is really probably the core of the functional adaptability that we have now is what we learned from them.
That's all of it is beautiful and so true. It resonated. I got goosebumps through it. Can you tell us a little bit about how your day looks like, just a regular day?
Okay. My day is pretty dialed in. I have something that's called the perfect day, and this is an interesting. It's also called the sacred. I call it the sacred path. I have actually, and this is a good exercise for everybody watching. You know all the things that you should be doing. Everybody knows.
Mm-hmm.
With the internet, whatever device you're watching this on, you already know all the food you should eat and the food you shouldn't eat. You should know what you should be watching, what you shouldn't be watching. You know when you're supposed to get up and when you stay too late. You know everything. And if there's some things that maybe there's a couple gaps about, I don't know what supplements to take, or I don't know. Come on, Google it. It'll take you 30 seconds and you will be able to live an optimized life. Why don't you? And that's your dragon. Doesn't want you to. So I have actually made that list, and it's about, I have about 20 things on it that I have to do, and I have, or I can't, I'm not allowed to do.
Oh.
And I rarely hit all of them, but it's because I have not managed things correctly. And it's not a control piece. If anything, it's a self-love piece. So my perfect day requires me, I get up at 6 o'clock, I do gratitude. Before I get out of bed, I do gratitude. And I do a gratitude for the 4 big components of my life, my career, my expression, my physical practice, my boundaries, my spiritual practice, my relationship. Like, I need to be grateful for something in each one of those houses. And that, there's a lot of research on gratitude. It really does alter the way we view the world. And then my wife and I, we do a tonic. We drink this, it is lemon juice and some powdered greens and cayenne pepper. We have the whole thing we make in the morning. And then we meditate. We do a bit like stretching, and we do meditation. And all of this before we touch our phones. Because the moment that you open that monster, then the world has its way with you. No longer you. And that's, the phones are deeply interwoven with the dragon. I mean, she uses that. She's using your phones as a way to manage you. So I don't even open my phones until then.
So from the moment you wake up to past meditation, how long does it take for you to get to your phone?
Probably an hour.
An hour.
Yeah.
Do you have an alarm clock by your bedside?
Yeah.
Standalone.
So I need that hour before the world has its way with me. Because the moment I wake up my daughter and I'm making breakfast, and then I'm, and the world is happening.
Yeah.
And at that point, I'm paddling hard and trying to ride the wave of that day.
Yeah.
Almost everyone works the best in the morning. Like, there's a sweet spot. Now, nobody likes getting up in the morning, but there's a little sweet spot between 9 and 11 where you're crushing. Like, almost everybody is like, I'm revitalized and I'm focused and optimistic. And then usually by early afternoon, the circadian rhythm hits, and that's why the siestas happen in many cultures. And so I delegate that sweet spot in the morning to the heavy lifting that I have to do during the day. And now I'm writing a couple books. Usually I'll set that if I have some big project that I have to do, that will be that block. And then I'm going to the gym 5 times a week. So that's always built in. And I work out with Tanya, and I've got a whole, crew that. My day ends at 8:30.
Okay.
So the phone goes away at 8:30. The phone is off.
I'm learning this.
And I'll play music on the phone.
Yeah.
So I will play music on the phone. But at 8:30 there is no more internet, and at that point I'm pushing my schedule forward, which is what did you do? What do you need to move forward? What are your commitments for the next day? Who do you need to call? Come out and hang out with you guys. I know what I'm doing the next day, and then I do my kind of wind down meditation and mobility. I do foam rolling and stuff like that.
Do you drink coffee?
I drink coffee in the mornings, yeah. I was doing bulletproof coffee for a while, but I got fat.
From Bulletproof?
Well, you know how many calories in a... It's
I
500
just got Bulletproof
It's
today for the
500
first time.
I don't know if you guys are cussing on the show. Do you guys cuss on the show?
Yeah,
Oh, okay. 500 fucking calories in a cup of bulletproof coffee.
that's why you made me this.
Yeah.
What's the best friend?
I want a friend or something like that.
So-
I need to get fat, okay?
You get like, well, I'm 55. And so my metabolism is running a very different level than yours. And so I was like, geez, I can't do that anymore. Now, bulletproof is awesome. I did it for 10 years.
Wow.
And there's a thing called ketosis, where you're, as long as you're not taking in any calories, then your body is in a fat burning mode.
Mm-hmm.
So it's actually burning this fat because there's no carbs in your system. So you switch over to, like, if there's no carbs in your system, then it's going to click right over to, we need to start harvesting, we need to start melting that fat on you. So you can eat a lot of fat in the mornings, as long as there are no carbs involved. And that's how bulletproof functions. It gives you a lot of calories and a lot of fat, but no carbs. So you're still maintaining that ketosis state where you're burning fat. However, you still cannot argue with calories in, calories out. Like, that's just a reality of, you know, how many calories that I burn in a day. And, you know, for me, it just made more sense to get protein and carbs involved so that I can go to the gym, for example.
Yeah.
And all those things. So it works for a lot of people who are not going to eat breakfast. Right?
Yeah.
If that is your breakfast.
Yeah.
And it really does work, because when you have a lot of fats, you know, and protein, you're not hungry. It really is a great system, but there's no breakfast involved. You can't do both. You can't have bulletproof and breakfast, because you just end up being a big fatty. So I had to stop that.
Okay.
So perfect day. Everybody should write that out, what their perfect day is, and then you will realize that you're not doing it, and then ask yourself why. And if you want to start exploring the nature of love, ask yourself why you're not loving yourself. So there you go. The act of being able to live your perfect day only exists once you have come out of the cave with your dragon. And then you get to start exploring your perfect day. It doesn't mean you're actually going to be able to do it, but it means you get to start that gardening process of growing vitality and actually building the life you want to live instead of having it built for you. So that intentionality is, that perfect day is kind of a North Star to navigate off of.
I like that analogy. What's your favorite podcast?
Oh
Or
boy.
a few of them, if you have a few.
Okay, I almost never have time to watch a full podcast. I mean, when do you watch a full podcast?
All the time. When I drive.
Okay,
I was
yeah.
just gonna say when you drive.
Driving, I will listen to podcasts. And Huberman,
Love you.
yeah, he's I got to meet him down at Gold's Gym recently. Nicest man in the world. Love him. Brilliant, kind, authentic. Like, that's a man. And optimized, wonderful man. Obviously, you know, Joe Rogan, or, you know,
Jargon's cool.
I'd vote for him. 2024, Joe Rogan. What I am watching a lot of is a news program called Breaking Points. And it's an independent news program. The two anchors are, you know, one is liberal and one is conservative. They both deeply respect each other, male, female. They're hella smart. And I listen to them on the way over here. And I'm often ashamed at how little I know of what's really going on in the world, because they're not telling us. You have to dig. And I don't have time to actively dig to find out what is going on with a lot of things in the world. So to find a news source that
Mhm.
is reputable and idealistic and kind of ferocious and independent. So that's probably where I spend most of my podcast listening time is those.
I'm gonna pass it on to her. It's been a few.
Yeah.
We are an hour into it, so
You can
wanna
cut
ask-
out all the names. Cut
yeah.
it out.
No, we don't want to cut anything because it's all beautiful and
You have a way with words.
yeah. I think let's do the.
If you want to do that first.
Yes.
If you don't, we can move on.
We're
No.
gonna do a card?
Yes, we're gonna ask you questions. Actually, more questions.
I was just joking. We came here like I'm gonna get my fortune read.
No.
Or we're
This
gonna have a
is
seance or something. Something kind of amazing.
no, that's
I'll record it.
This is actually different questions. It's not a fortune, but
While she's doing that, what are your favorite songs to work out under?
I have a whole playlist.
I'm on that playlist.
And like I said, I grew up in the '80s, so heavy metal.
Yeah.
Rage Against the Machine. There's a lot of kind of cool.
Have you heard the new Tool album?
Tool.
Yeah.
Tool's even too heavy for me.
Really?
Yeah. Tool's pretty hard.
It is.
It's pretty hard. So no, I have not.
It's really good.
okay. Choose one card.
I must get this yellow one right here.
Yellow?
Oh, it's not yellow. Okay.
That's
Oh,
yellow.
it is yellow. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. What kind of question? What are your coping mechanisms for stress?
For stress.
Yes.
Breath work.
Breath work. Love it. Yes.
That's it. It used to be booze, but that was not a very, very good one.
I agree.
Yeah.
Too many calories too.
No.
Along with.
There's no, I actually did the math on that because I was drinking like a couple bottles a night of of wine, and I don't want to mess this up too, but all the smart people out there, but there's a certain amount of calories that equals a pound.
Mm-hmm.
Like I think it's 3,500. 3,500 calories equals 1 pound. And there's something about how many calories is in a bottle of wine. And so I just did the numbers on like, okay, I'm drinking 10 bottles of wine a week. How many empty calories is that? And then why am I fat? Like, oh.
Oh, you did the math.
Well, that was what it was. It was kind of like, ooh, I'm putting on 2 pounds of fat a week. And this is over the,
Wow.
for decades. Like, oh my goodness, that's 250
Don't
pounds.
tell Paula.
And then do the number on money.
Yeah.
Particularly when you start drinking better wine.
Yeah,
Because
as you
like,
age.
oh, I drink good wine now. Like, oh, there was just no win. There was no winning. And then I was, I would drink 1 bottle of wine, and then if I started another one, it was like, oh, now obviously I started another one, so I
You had to
would
finish it.
hide that first bottle, and then like, no, I'm just drinking this one. So the moment I started hiding bottles, I'm like,
That's
oh,
it.
you just hid a bottle from your wife.
Oh my
Like,
god.
you might have a problem. You're
That's
fat,
awesome.
broke, and you're hiding bottles like that. So that's not a good coping mechanism for that.
Yeah, breath
What?
work there.
Breath work is pretty, obviously that's a real popular topic.
Yeah.
Everybody's doing breath work. But
Speaking of, I jumped into the cold shower 1 minute and 30 minutes because I knew you were going to be here today.
Oh.
My first day of the 30 days.
nice.
Yeah.
Whew.
So good.
Yeah,
After,
that's
oh
good.
my god, it feels so good.
God bless you. That's the one thing on my perfect day that I do not regularly hit.
Mm-hmm.
It's tough.
It is. It's
And
good.
it's a tough one. You guys know Aubrey Marcus? He's got a big podcast.
Yeah.
On it.
Yes.
He's the founder of On It. He partners with Joe Rogan. And I went to go see him once, and he was talking about cold showers. And he said, of all the things that I do in my life, that's the one. That's the one. He says, I look at the nozzle and I say, I'm a human being. Do your worst. And I was like, it is that intense. I'm like, oh.
He's into dragons too.
Is
His
he?
thing is dragons, yeah.
Oh, wow, I didn't know. So breath work, the moment I, and my meditation practice around breath work, And so I find that I can drop in very, very quickly to a recalibrated, regulated state.
I can tell by the way you speak.
We're doing more?
Yes, we're going to two more.
Only one more?
Two more.
Oh, two more. I'm going to go for a green one.
It's a green one. You want to ask that one?
Sure. If you could ask ask the universe one question and get the truth, what would you want to know?
That's a good one.
Ask the universe. I know it sounds really snooty, but I can't really think of any that I don't at least have a general sense of.
That's a hard one too.
You go first. You go first.
I go first.
You
I
go
haven't
first.
even
It'll
thought
give
about
me
this one.
It'll give me a chance to churn a little bit here with this.
I would have so many questions, I think.
Okay, then you go. What's your question?
Well, I immediately one experience came to my mind one time. I had a lot of out of body experiences, and one of them was I don't remember. I had a migraine or something. I lay down, meditated, and went to this place where it was just the sound. Like it was like sound, and boom, I was in some frequency. It was no space, no colors, nothing. It was frequency, like a radio kind of frequency. And then I started hearing a voice. I was talking to that voice. It was man voice. Very interesting man voice.
What language?
English. It was English. And interesting. It was English.
Do you think in English or Russian?
I'm thinking mainly languages. I speak other languages too, like where I'm from, and honestly, it's always mixed up.
Okay.
Always mixed up. So yeah, and I don't remember what it was telling me, what I was asking, but I remember one question I asked. I was scared to ask questions because I didn't want to go away, and that what made me go away eventually. I asked him, "Who are you?" And he said, "I am here and I'm not here." And it said something else, and I was scared to ask. I thought I will come back and I'll ask again. So what I would ask probably like, what is it like? What are we? What is like? Who are we? What are we? What are these frequencies? Or what is it? So I guess that would leave more and more questions. So when this question came up, that experience came to my mind. I'm like, what was it? What is this frequency? What, like, that kind of questions I would ask.
Okay. What are you asking me?
She wasn't my story. She wasn't thinking about it.
I wasn't thinking about it, but I would want to know what the creative mathematical function is.
The creative mathematical function?
Like the function that creates everything. It says, what would you want to know if you could, but just the truth of that, and to be able to understand it.
I think this probably the go-to question would be, what's the purpose of life? Right, that's the stock one, and I think I've kind of got a good line on that one for myself. So I would I would go a little bit more practical. I don't know about aliens.
Okay.
Where's the nearest ones? Like how?
They're coming.
That's the.
By 2027, we will all see them and talk to them.
Are they here? Have they been like? Because obviously there has to be other, like sources in the world. But I'm kind of ready for that. I would like to know that.
Me too. That would be fun.
And then my second one would be maybe related to reincarnation, because
yes, we do.
I think it's all connected.
I'm pretty good with, energetically, we're part of some cosmic wheel, but it would be kind of fun to know, like, okay, I want to actually know give me the practical, functioning of, okay, my consciousness, my spirit, my unique my code When that goes back into the system, how did that come back? That would be a fun one.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a great one.
It's a
I-
specific.
Yeah, it's very specific.
Yeah.
One more.
Okay.
Let's see.
Oh, lost civilizations. That one might even be more. Again,
Oh.
it's practical. Graham Hancock and
Asians.
Fingerprints of the Gods. Like, I believe there was another proto civilization, very advanced, and so I'm a believer in that. But I'd like to know.
Yeah.
I'd like to know.
I like to
one
know
question. That's it's too long.
This is the one that you wanted, actually.
Oh yeah.
Oh, really?
You can make a designer baby.
Oh.
Would you rather optimize it primarily for intelligence or happiness and optimism?
Oh, okay, not happiness. Happiness is just one step up from pleasure.
That's
It's
interesting.
beyond happiness is purpose. And that, in fact, purpose would be the driver of happiness, which would then be the driver of pleasure. But so it wouldn't be happiness. It was intelligence or optimism. So I'll go intelligence or optimism.
But you can forgo this and just give us your own answer.
Oh.
Yeah, this is.
You're pretty much saying fuck you to this anyway.
Yeah. Grit, will,
Well,
drive, the ability to recognize and pursue personal legend. And I don't think intelligence has a whole lot to do with that.
Yeah.
And so optimism would be closer. So of those three,
Mm-hmm.
optimism wins.
okay.
You're gonna win. The optimistic person wins.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, most really intelligent people are kind of crazy. And I've known a number of geniuses, and they're all crazy, right? So the smarter people get, the more self-aware they become, and oftentimes the more tortured.
Mm-hmm.
So I'd go of those three, optimism.
Beautiful.
And optimism is the antidote for pessimism, which is what is crippling our society today. The nihilism that there is no meaning, there is no purpose, there is no larger sense of either things or institutions or purpose.
It's funny, you said there's that feeling of there's no meaning. So I felt that a few times throughout my life, to different stages. And every time it lasts only for a few minutes. And then I go back to, but it's fun. Like that's just like an underlying driver of, but it's fun.
So you'd be my optimistic child. That's how she would respond. That's fun. Yeah, that'll keep you going.
Yeah.
Life is not always fun, and nor is it pleasurable, nor is it happy. I don't think those are wonderful experiences to have. That we're very blessed if we are, but it doesn't get you through the majority of the day, which is hard.
But even then,
it may not be fun. There are things that
I guess
are not
it's
fun.
the wrong word. It's that experience itself is not fun, but the adventure and the learning of the process of the situation.
I would call that meaningful.
Yeah.
I think getting up early is meaningful. I think meditation is meaningful. Eating well is meaningful. Having these conversations is meaningful. This one's fun too. There is a lot of things that happen to be pleasurable.
Yeah.
And which is a wonderful dynamic, but it's not necessary. Right? It really is not. Fun is not a necessary driver for grown-ups.
I'm 31. I'm about to be 32.
Yeah.
I guess I've just warped my definition of fun to fit my.
Well, it's like love, you gotta just find the one that is as close as you can to what makes it. And again, I want to know the what's happening on the other side of the equation where it affects the real world. And if I or anybody that I'm working with, it needs to be fun for them to do it. Ooh, good luck. Good luck getting through those challenges.
It's the little things that count, right? The little things, that quote, the little things that count.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I find the little things to be really fun, like just the color of this leaf, things like that, you know.
That's the gratitude piece, you know, and the more pleasurable and fun the moments are, the bigger we can open our aperture of like, oh, this is so great. When things get really hard and when we start doing very significant things in life, they do get hard. When you start following like a legitimate personal legend journey, like the alchemist, there's not a lot of fun in that. His journey was not fun. His journey was betrayal, violence, threat. You know, like it was brutal. That entire book was really, really challenging. It's almost like Dorothy's journey through Oz.
that gets
it sounds.
Yeah. I guess this one, like, it was fun.
And he not only he got threatened with death multiple times. He got the shit beat out of him. He got all his things stolen. He got betrayed. There's nothing fun about his journey. But he was on alignment with his personal legend, and therefore it was meaningful. So for me, meaning is always going to trump fun. Now, there are times where things are so unfun that we have to collapse down to a very, very small moment. Mm-hmm. And right now, at this very moment, there are no problems. Ever. There are never any problems right now. Yeah, there is no problems. Now, the moment I get, I expand half an hour from now, I'm thinking about traffic. What do I have to get home. I have all of a sudden I have problems because now all of a sudden I've opened my life up to, I've gone from the moment of killing this moment to hunting the future. And there are always problems in that. And I have to, the more optimistic and the more resilient and powerful and vital I am, the bigger I can play in the world. The more I can absorb of managing people, managing my life, and managing all those pieces. But it is a skill set to learn when things are becoming overwhelming and very unsettling that we do need to collapse back to this breath.
Yeah.
Right? When we cannot be anywhere else if we're taking this breath. And that's the salvation. That is where we have that ultimate fallback point of, well, this is that moment. And that's where wolves live. Mm-hmm. They live in this moment. There are no problems. There are always problems with this.
I really loved what you said, killing the present to hunt in the future.
Yeah. Hunting and killing, very different things.
Yeah.
It's the difference between concentration, which is gathering, and focusing, which is subtractive. It's a completely different agenda. And understanding which one of those modalities that serves this point in time is a very intentional one. To be skillful at, now it's time to open aperture, hunt and gather, which is being curious, synergy, creativity, all those great moments, versus I'm going to now collapse down to, this is what I need to accomplish now. Mm-hmm. And I'm going to kill this project. And that's, and meditation is really the practical application of building the ability to focus. Mm-hmm. Right? Creativity is the opposite. I mean, you're going to throw open the gates of opportunities and intuition and inspiration and genius, or Juno for women, and that's the opposite of focusing. That's concentrating creation.
I'm very interested to see our creative part.
I know, which is really good segue.
You got into something creative, so that was.
So we're gonna transform this room into an art studio.
Ooh.
You're gonna get on. We're gonna start the
Right now?
discussion right now.
Yeah,
Oh,
right
okay.
now, like we'll.
We'll stop this
Yeah,
video.
stop.
Thank you so much for being here.
Yeah.
I've had personally so much fun, and I know she's giggling.
Yeah, and we would love to have you here again.
Anytime.
Hopefully,
I have
Tanya
some more
will be
questions.
able to join
Yes.
us. It would be so much fun.
Yeah, you guys are that.
So I feel like we can keep going, and
Yeah,
going.
about archery and all of the other cool
Oh, there's
things.
so many more stuff. We didn't talk about Wolf Tribe much either. There's so much. So yeah, and yeah, I think we're gonna go to the art part right now.
Oh,
And yeah, thank you.
all right.
Thank
Pleasure.
you.
Thank you.
Wow.
Great.